Oh, I didn't teach. I took a Type C leave, like a sabbatical, only better because you don't have to deliver anything. You just leave and come back, right? And they pay you. It's good. You have to kind of work like a bunch of hours to do that. But anyway, it was good. And we went to Bhutan, which is a country in the Himalayan mountains. And it's the last surviving Tibetan Buddhist kingdom in the world. And they're dwindling. And we're going to see that. That's kind of an unusual thing. But first, let's start with the trip. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a bunch of vacation pictures. And so hopefully you'll experience Bhutan and get a sense of what it was like. I'm going to start with the plane trip. So here's the plane trip. We went from New York City because we were going to see my nephew. This is the long way around, but you see we're flying near Iceland, and you can see the distance. We're like 2,500 miles in 4 hours, and it's a long flight. It was a 12-hour flight. It was 7,000 miles, and it's kind of interesting when you get over Western or Eastern Europe here, and you're going over Turkey. All of a sudden, you turn left, and why are you doing that? Well, we don't want to fly over Syria, and let's not fly over Iraq. And then they go right down the Iraq-Iran border into Dubai. And so we went from Dubai, and then from Dubai, we went to Nepal, Kathmandu, and from Kathmandu, we went to Bhutan. Let's see the flight coming into Bhutan. Oh, here we are looking out the window. Ooh, that looks good, huh? I was getting excited looking at this. I think this is going to be nice. Very beautiful country. Here we are in the airport. And here's the flight coming into land. Now, what's kind of interesting is if you look at it, see right up here, this gap. When we flew in down that gap, and you drop in through the clouds, hard bank right, hard bank left, and land at the airport. And it was very dramatic, very dramatic. This is not our flight. You could probably figure out. But I was on the patio of our hotel, which was overlooking the airport. You might think that was a bad thing, except there's only a few flights that come in every day. So, we just got to see the airplane land. So that was fine. So where is Bhutan? Here's Bhutan, right here, Bhutan, and Nepal. And Kathmandu's in the middle of Nepal. Himalayan mountains go along the northern border there. So the interesting thing geopolitically is that Bhutan is between Tibet, or some people call it the Tibetan region of China. You can kind of get a sense of people's political views by what they call it. Tibet, if you don't know, was taken over by China in the 1950s, and they came in and they shut down all the Buddhist monasteries, and they've stopped religion in Tibet. And so the Buddhism in Bhutan is very similar to the Buddhism in Tibet. That's where it originates from. So they feel very threatened by this in the north. And in fact, there's a plateau right here called the Daklam Plateau, which is a high point. And if you look at India, they call this area like the chicken neck of India. You see how here's Bangladesh. This is actually Bangladesh. Okay, this is an old map, and Myanmar down here, right? But they call this the chicken neck. It comes out to the Assam region of India. Well, the Assam region of India was trying to pull away. There were the Assam rebels trying to pull away to form an independent nation, and India was sending troops in. Well, what were the Assam rebels doing? They were going into Bhutan and hiding out so that the Indian army wouldn't follow them in, and then they'd come in and do attacks. Well, India said, hey, if you don't take care of those guys, we're going to do it. We're going to come into your country. So Bhutan said, well, we'll do it. And they had their only modern war to fight the Assam rebels and drive them out. And we'll see some photos of the monuments to that war in a little So at any rate, on the Daklam Plateau, it looks down on this chicken neck. Well, the Chinese have a road that comes in and it stops there. That would be a little disconcerting, right? You're on, like, what if Canada, right, came down to North Dakota and did a road and had a big military base just north of the border? You know, okay, what are you doing that for? You know, that would be kind of unusual. So Bhutan is worried about it. Nepal is also kind of in between. So they're in between China and India. Those are big and growing countries. So there's a lot of geopolitical considerations there. Nepal, they both have elections in Bhutan and Nepal. There's elections in both countries. But Bhutan is a monarchy. Nepal was a monarchy. And there was a little event that happened in about 2001 where one member of the family came and murdered all the rest. That was like, whoa, about 13 people murdered that were in the family of the monarchy. That was a big event. Ever since that time now, India is very involved in the politics of Nepal. And they, when they wrote some of their constitution items, India said, well, we object to what you wrote. And, well, it's our constitution. Well, they stopped fuel deliveries to Nepal. I said, okay, we'll change that, right? So there were some things that happened. Bhutan, on the other hand, is trying to set up agreements with India to try to buffer off China, to keep them at bay. So they're kind of trying to play the two powers off of each other, and it's an interesting situation. So, all right. So we're going to look at Bhutan, and we basically flew into Paro, and then we drove all the way out to Trongsa. This is about 140 miles or 130 miles. It takes, if you were to drive this road, your average speed would be, I looked it up on Google Maps, 13 miles per hour. So, oh, okay, these roads are not very fast, and we're going to see some of the roads. Now, we went with Road Scholar. Here's our tour guide. And Bhutan, they encourage tourism, but only high-end tourism. You have to spend $250 each day you're in the country in order to attend. And we achieved that by having that go towards hotels and food, and our tour guide and a bus where they drove us all around the country. And we were very grateful for that bus. You'll tell when we see the roads. But that's our crew. That's a small group of Rhodes Scholars. First, this is we went to the National Memorial Chorten, which was for the third king. So there's been 5 kings in Bhutan, starting in 1907, and this is all the same lineage. The 6th king has been born, so there's a young boy who's lined up to be the 6th king. And everybody's pretty happy with the kings there. It's a constitutional monarchy, and you might think, oh, did the people rise up and say, we want to have, some control? It really came the other way around. The king said, you people really should get involved in this. And they said, are you sure? Can you just, take care of us? It's been working pretty well. And they said, no, you need to. So they've been having elections. And it's interesting because the results of the elections have been throw the bums out. Every time they vote for somebody new to come in. So it's kind of an interesting situation. Now, the 3 main historical figures in Bhutan, well, here's Buddha. So Buddha was from about 600 BC. And then Guru Rinpoche, who was the one who brought Buddhism to Bhutan, that was about the 8th century. And what happened was there was a Raja in India who was defeated and came up the valley into the high mountains of Bhutan with about 100 followers, and he became king of that region, right? Because he came in with 100 people. It's a little backwater area, and so they just took over. And they were studying the kind of animism at that time, where there's spirits in the rocks and the trees and things. And there was a spirit in a cave. And so the Raja, what he did was he groomed his son to go to war back to India from where they came from. And he groomed him and he groomed him. And then they went down to do the war. And he said, son, you should lead these forces. He led the forces and the son was killed. Oh, and so the king was angry. He killed a horse. He threw the horse carcass right in front of the cave where the spirit was. And the spirit was angry. And he just struck the king. I don't know what it was. He disabled him somehow. He couldn't do it. He was very sick. And they said, well, what are we going to do? They invited Guru Rinpoche to come in from Nepal, and he brought in Buddhism, and they did this spiritual dance, and we'll see some of the spiritual dances that they do to this day to drive the spirit out. So that was Guru Rinpoche. The other one is called Namgal Narayan. I can't say it right, but he's called the Zadrum, and he died in 1650. And he's called the unifier. He unified the whole country. You know, one person's unifier is another person's, so that's history, right? But at any rate, he unified the whole country with forts all around that they call zongs. And he died in 1650, and they were afraid other people would come in and try to take over. And so they hid the fact for 50 years. So nobody knew. They said, oh, he's meditating, right? and they didn't have very many attacks, so it seems to work. But we're going to see the Zadrang, that's from 1650, and Guru Rinpoche, he's from the 8th century. And we'll see them all over the place. There's a Chorten. And then here, these are prayer wheels. They have prayers, and they're very massive and heavy. And they take prayers, and they print them up, and they print them up thousands of times, and they wrap them around, and then they spin them around. And it's kind of like leveraging your prayers, You get 1,000 for each turn, right? So that's how that's done. Here's the Buddha, Guru Rinpoche. So they've got statues. These are some key. Now we're in the Zong in the main city. So Bhutan has about 800,000 people. And in the main city, Thimphu, there's about 250,000 people. So it's a small little country. And we're going to see some dances in this facility. So the Zongs had 3 purposes. They're forts, right, for the army. They are also administrative centers for the government, and they are also had temples and monasteries in there. So they did all 3 functions within these zongs. We're getting ready now. Here the monks are lining up on the steps. So here. This is like the Guru Rinpoche when he was driving away the negative spirits. This is the dance that they do. You can see all the monks lined up here, and all the tourists, and there's the tourists with the cameras. It was a big festival day. Now that fellow here coming out, he's like you might say a Yahoo. He's like, oh, I'm causing trouble, and the dancers are always gonna, at various times, they drive away. He's an evil spirit. They drive him away, right? Now, this part is interesting because the people in the blue robes are the newly elected legislators. And so while there's a separation of church and state in the United States, that's not at all the case in Bhutan, where religion and government are fully integrated. In fact, they're trying to preserve their culture. That's a main objective they have. Now, Bhutan itself is about 75% Buddhist and about 22% Hindu and about 2% Bon, which Bon is the animist religion that was originally in that area. But you'll notice the legislators are going to get involved and do some bowing and prostrating and get involved in the presentation. We'll see a few more pictures of this zong before we go on. So here's the valley, and you can see the zong down here. There are going to be tons of very picturesque photos that we're going to see. This is an old bridge. We went across to the old market to buy, like a flea market, to buy some stuff. It was very interesting. Okay. Let's go on. They have a sitting Buddha. It's one of the largest sitting Buddhas in the world. It was built by I believe it was a Indonesian billionaire who built this. It's big. Here's the stairways coming up to it. Very grandiose. And here's, as you get to the top of those stairs, this is what the view would look like. So it's very beautiful, and the stonework and all the statues and the gold work. And they had many artisans from many countries who got involved in this. This is a picture of a Garuda, who is like it's a combination beast that is like a mount instead of a horse. They would fly in on a Garuda, right, to do battle. And that's the sitting Buddha from the distance. From the central city, we traveled inland, and we went over the pass. And I talked about the Assam rebels. Well, we went up to this Dachala Pass, where they have a memorial to the soldiers who died in that fight. If you look out, you can see all the high mountains. This is in the Himalaya Mountains. You can see the Himalaya Mountains in the distance. And they have 108 of these stupas. 108 is a very important number. And in all their tributes, they use 108. Well, what is 108? Well, as a math teacher, I would say it's 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. I think that's significant, right? I think that is significant, okay? Well, there's 2 6s in there. If you study ancient numerical systems, 6 is an important number. But at any rate, 108 is the number that they establish. And if they have prayer flags for someone who's died, they'll put up 108 prayer flags, right? Unless the person that died was a 1-year-old child, then they might put up 1, because they say, because you have to, 108 trees, that's a lot of trees to cut down, right? But at any rate, they put these for the soldiers who died fighting that war, and it's very picturesque view. Oh, we saw some, then we continued on the road. We saw some monkeys. There's some monkeys. And we continued on the road. Some more forts, bridges going over the rivers. Here, what do we have here? I think these are lemur. No, this is there's a lot of, so there's the snow melt from the Himalayas, and hydroelectric power is a big item. It's one of the the biggest things that they export. They'll export hydroelectric power to India. So that's an important resource that they have in that country. Very beautiful. Oh, here's the lemurs. That's our guide. He's egging them on, making that noise.
So wise. Their faces.
Look at the tail, it's long.
It's hard to get the video from the bus, so I apologize for that. There's the dominant male coming in to push the other one from his spot. So that's interesting. Then we went to a monastery at about 10,000 feet. It's a Gangji Monastery. And here's the temple. We went inside the temple. You're not allowed to take photos inside the temple. And had a lot of people outside. You have to take your shoes off if you're going to go into the temple, so there's shoes all over the place. Here's a monk who spoke with us, so one of the advantages of having Rhodes Scholars set up the tour. And we took a walk through the countryside. We saw this potato farmers loading their crop. He was like showing off a little bit there. He's trying to make a show for us. Loading up the truck. We tried to stay away from that fellow. He was right by the path there. I didn't want to get too close. And that's the view from our hotel room. So we had some very nice accommodations, right? Very beautiful. Everywhere was beautiful. After Gangji Monastery, we go over the Lawala Pass. So at every pass, they'll have a stupa like that. Just a place to pray. Okay, cows. So it's interesting because the Hindus will not kill cows, right? And neither will the Buddhists. But if the Muslims kill the cows, then the Hindus or the Buddhists will eat them, right? So that was an interesting situation. More views. Okay, here, this is another zong. Remember, a zong is a fortress. It's got, administrative, and it's also got religious and all those components in it. This is in Trongsa. And you can see the road. So here's the road. So, if you want to go 130 miles, you might have to go 390 miles winding around just to get where you're trying to get. Another pass. Now we're heading to the eastern part of the country here. And we get to Bhutan. Now, Guru Rinpoche, that's where I was talking about, where he did that dance with the driving the spirit out of the cave. This was where he did his thing in Bhutan. This is where the Raja came up. Here's a school. We stopped by a school to see some students running around. They're getting organized before they get together. And then we got into the classroom.
Okay, that's good.
They all wear their uniforms.
For tomorrow's festival?
Yes.
Okay, so it's always good to have a day off, right? Yes or no?
Yes.
So are you going to the temple tomorrow? blessing, to witness the festival. That's so much fun, right? So are you going with your friends or with your parents? All right, friends. So are you buying junk food? Potato chips?
That's our
Lays?
guide who's talking to the students
It's
there.
not good. It's not good. Carbonated juice, Coca-Cola. These juice are not good, okay? So try to avoid it.
So
Eat healthy food.
he's saying don't do that. Okay, now we're at a very, very old temple, and there's a series of temples that are in the outline of a witch who supposedly enchanted the region, and at all the knees and the ankles and the elbows of this witch, they've built all these old temples. I'm not sure the date, but it'd be like around 1000 or something like that. Very old. And here's where Guru Rinpoche did his dance. So the cave is back behind, and we got in to see the cave. There's a temple in front of it. He danced right out front, right where that one stupa is. So this is where the Raja invited him in, and Buddhism came to Bhutan for the first time. Then we went to a small village called Ura, and we did a lot of hiking. Okay, so we went hiking down from 10,000 to 8,000 feet. That's my wife. And here's a wall. This is Sanskrit. I believe this is Sanskrit. 108 of these prayer flags. That's how many there are. Quite windy, as you can see. And afterwards, we went to a home for lunch, and we went upstairs. So this is the prayer room. So there's no chairs. You sit on the floor. But this is where honored guests would come to this room. And our guide here's the temple. Our guide talked to us and told us about the region. This is the woman who lived in the house, and she's got her child, but she's got a neighbor's child that she had to take care of that day, so she's trying to entertain the neighbor's child. And this is in the main kitchen area room. There's their stove. There's some kitties back there. A family of kittens. Here's the room. You see they have a TV. There's the kittens. Okay, after Ura, we went to Trangsa. Now, that Zong I was telling you about. Well, first we saw... First we saw another dance. This one's not as well attended as the first one we saw. In a more rural location. There's an evil spirit, right? And the phallus is a symbol they use. One of the old religious figures is called the Divine Madman, and he would drink and he would womanize, and but still that was somehow religious, and he could get away with it, and he was thumbing his nose at the conventional religious figures of the time. But he says, well, people say, well, you can't do that today, but you could do that then, and it could still be religious. But they're trying to preserve their arts and crafts, so they'll have some of the old arts they're doing all the time. You can get a sense of some of the roads here. These are the roads we were driving on. You can see why it would only go 13 miles per hour. And there's some pretty deep dips off the side. I wouldn't want to go off the edge. Okay, here's some more views. Hydroelectric. So they had a very huge hydroelectric dam here. Now here, this is the zong, or the fort here. Above the fort, they would have what we call a watchtower. Here we are on the watchtower, and you have a very spectacular view of everybody who's coming up after you, you know. You could see invading armies very easily from there. Then we went down to the zong itself, and they were shooting. This is an archery practice, and they would shoot. The target is here. Very long-range archery they did, and the bows they had would cost like $2,000 a piece. They're very expensive bows. Here's inside the zong. And then outside. So this is from our hotel room across. We had a pretty good view of it. Here's at night. There's in the morning. Okay, I like that view from our hotel room there. All right. After Trongsa, we went out to we saw a dart contest on the side of the road.
Who's the best?
They don't worry about their safety too much, right? They stand right here. The target's right here. They say, no, point over, go over there. Okay, and after they hit the target, this is what they do. They do a song and a dance to say, hey, we got the target.
So you dance?
You can see the roads were not very good. There were all kinds of perils. This is a Japanese bridge. You could always tell where the Japanese did their. They would donate road parts, and the Japanese did great stuff. Very beautiful. Then we went to this new temple. I believe this was for the fourth king. His wife made this temple. And if you go up and up and up, you see this view from higher and higher altitudes. It's very beautiful. And a wide angle, a look at it. So that's from the roof of the temple. Okay, that was heading back to the western part of Bhutan. Now, this is from our hotel room in more western area, Punakha. Here's the Punakha Zong. And there's two rivers here, and the Zabdrung, who had he came from Tibet. Okay, so the unifier. Remember the unifier who died in 1650, who unified the whole of Tibet? Well, he was over one part of Buddhism that he brought into Tibet, and he had an ancient relic, and what that relic was a vertebrae, and he brought it in. They weren't happy that he had this relic, and so they sent armies in from Tibet to go claim that relic. And what he had done is he made a replica of the relic, and he took it out and he waded into the river, and he said, "You can't come and have it. If you come and take it, nobody should have it." And he threw the relic in the river. They went, "What? Ah!" And they went home. So it worked, and he kept the relic. These are the ancient kings. Here's inside the Zong, and here's our guide explaining some of the Buddhist teachings to us. That's the temple. Okay, let me see. I want to make sure to get to Nepal here. Then we went to Tiger's Nest. So Tiger's Nest it's in the western part of Bhutan. There's a monastery on a cliff, and the story is that Guru Rinpoche from the 8th century flew on a flying tigress up to this cliff and went there to meditate. And now they have what they call butter candles that they use all the time up there. And the place is burned down several times because when you have a bunch of candles around. But they've rebuilt it. It's very beautiful. Let's see, they're back at the construction techniques. You can see the bamboo they use for supports to hold the concrete up. That's kids coming back from school. Here's our group. We're getting ready to go up. We have to kind of go up with the horses. Some people can't walk and they need to go on horseback. So some of us were walking, some people were on horseback. There it is. From below. Now how are we going to get there? We have to climb up this left side. We come up, and then we go down, and then we back up. So it's a lot of a circuitous route to get there. Oh, there we go. We're up to the other side, looking right across. It is something, huh? Okay, here, so you'll get to see, this is where we come in. You'll see the huge waterfall. So that's from the other side coming in, down the path. Huge waterfall. How big? It's that big. Keep going. Okay, and then there's a huge cliff up above you, right? So it's pretty dramatic. I highly recommend. This is not an easy hike, and you have to. They kind of make sure that people can make the hike before they take you, but it's definitely worthwhile to do. Oh, and you got to get a selfie, right? In front. Okay, there it is. It is quite something. Very stunning, right on the middle of a cliff there. Okay, let's go to Kathmandu. So back at Kathmandu, now we got a different guide in Kathmandu, and I'm going to show you this one. She's describing going to Changara temple, an ancient temple. She describes it, so I'll let her describe it. And you can see the traffic as she's talking about it.
For Vishnu also. For Vishnu, we also say Narayan. And this place is located in the place called Changu. That's why they named the temple Changu Narayan Temple. And this is the oldest temple in Nepal, which dates back to 464 AD. Okay, this is the oldest temple of Nepal, where you can see the pillar erected, which was written 464 AD. That's why it is the oldest temple in Nepal.
You should look for the pedestrians in the middle of the road here.
Yeah. So in that temple, you see all the statues of Vishnu in different forms. Okay, which you will see when you.
They make it
go
all
to
work
the
somehow.
Okay. And other things I'll describe you on the spot when we reach there. Thank you.
That always amazed me, the traffic.
Yeah.
So let's go to Changu Nangara and look at Nangara and see the view. This is in the countryside, walking around. Here's in the temple itself. Interesting thing is, they had a king praying to a god, and then when the next group took control of the country, they said, "Oh, kings should not be praying to God." So they chopped the king's head off. Right? That's what they wanted to make a statement there. That's the view down. So. Kathmandu, how it originally, there were like 3 trading posts, and people would come through and trade. So Nepal they're used to people coming through, and you've probably heard this song, Kathmandu, you know, Bob Seger. All the hippies were coming to Kathmandu, right? They would love to, they're just smoking marijuana and doing whatever they were doing, you know, doing drugs. It was like not a problem, okay? And they were just hanging out and being, well, they're used to kind of a mix there, so they were all right with it, but there was some problems. They had old temples, and they'd have stuff out there, and some people would just come in and steal, you know? It's like, oh, we didn't have to worry about security before, but now we do, right? Now, this is in contrast to Bhutan, which is very secluded, and they're trying to keep people out. So in the 1950s, when the Chinese came into Tibet, many Tibetan refugees wanted to come into Bhutan. Why? They were most similar ethnically and religiously to Bhutan, but Bhutan said they were feeling threatened by this wave of refugees, and they kept people out. So the Tibetan refugees largely went to Kathmandu, and there's a large Tibetan Buddhist community in Kathmandu today for that reason. But the 3 trading posts around Kathmandu merged, and so this is for this. These are all Vishnu. So, we talked about how Bhutan was Buddhist. Well, Nepal is largely Hindu, okay? And so this is a Hindu temple. Vishnu is a Hindu god. Then we went to Bhootnath Stupa, which is, now this is an ancient Buddhist temple, and it's interesting because there's a spot to walk around the top. So people can walk around the outside on the ground, or they can walk up on the top. Buddhists will never walk on the top because they're saying, this is sacred in here, I can't walk on there. But so anybody you see walking on top, you know they're not Buddhist, right? And people would walk around and they'd go in a clockwise sense. And if somebody ever went in a counterclockwise sense, that was somebody from the Bon religion because they have the other way. But mostly people were going in a clockwise sense. Here, this is just wonderful. Here we are having a dinner at a restaurant across the street. There's the temple right there. It was amazing. You can hear the dogs. The dogs have a run in the streets, right? There's a lot of wild dogs outside all these places, all these towns. Okay, so to get back there, we would have to walk down these alleyways. Looks pretty tight. If I were in Lagos, I don't think I'd ever walk down an alleyway like that. But it was pretty safe there. Here we are walking around the stupa in a clockwise sense. There it is. So we would go out every morning at about 7 or 8 o'clock, and everybody would have their morning routine. They would go down to the stupa and walk around in the morning and then go off about their day. Then we went to Durbur Square, which is one of the other ancient areas, and we walked around. Now this area was very badly hit by earthquakes. So here it's destroyed. You can see how the temple was destroyed. This is what it used to look like before it was destroyed. That's an old photograph. So they're doing restoration work to try to bring it back. So here's the gate to the old temple. The princess would be up there looking out the slits of those windows at people going by. This is the bath, the old king's bathing area. And we walk down the streetways. There's a lot of people selling things. Very cheap in Kathmandu, very cheap. They're making pottery here. We're going to go up the stairs of this temple and look out. So here's the view from the top looking backwards. And then lunch, looking out over the city. And the final place we went to was Pashupatinath, Pashupatinath, which is a spot where they cremate people. It's a river that goes down to the Ganges, so there's cremation, and people would they'd have to buy firewood, they'd have to get it all arranged. There's a monkey. Here's one of the temples around in the area. And then here we're going to show the cremation that goes on. So, well, not right here, the next one. So that's the sacred river there.
Clean it up. And during monsoon, most of the rivers are overflowing. So all the trash from us.
Oh, wrong way. So this is a cremation.
Members of the family are handling the body. So this is the reason why India is 1.2 billion people. Because
They have a certain
in good old times, the family believed that
ceremony
someone
that they
died,
do, and they cremate the body right by the
the
river.
dead body on the ground will stretch over 4 corners, taking you to the river to be cremated. This is the only reason how you could be liberated. So always and until
Okay. So that's it. So that's my vacation picture. So I hope you got a sense of Bhutan and Nepal from that.